Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint, Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Ella and I'm delighted to be joined by Mikael, who'll be talking to you about configuration and customization for Microsoft Search. Remember to join the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC21. Don't forget to check out the Resource Centre. This is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. We would like to thank Nentex for supporting us for SharePoint Week this week. After the webinar, we will have a question and answer session. Type any question you may have into the question window. Questions can be asked throughout the webinar, so if you have one, I'll be able to pause and ask Mikael the question, and we'll also keep some questions to the end as well. This webinar will be recorded. We'll notify you by email when it is available. So now I'm going to pass you over to Mikael for the webinar. Good morning, Mikael.
Thank you. So, am I still sharing my screen?
Not yet.
Let's see.
Yeah, perfect.
Right. So, welcome everyone. So, I can't say it's a lovely Friday here in Oslo because it's actually raining. That means I'll be wet when I walk home later today, unless the rain stops. But that's on me, not on you. So let's not talk about rain. Let's talk about search and Microsoft Search, some configuration and customization options. So just a little bit about me. So my name is Mikael Svensson. I work as a principal program manager in Microsoft Search, but I do have a license to develop by my development team. So even though I'm not doing active development, I am allowed to do some. So that means I actually do some minor development every now and then to keep me sane, since I'm a developer at heart from many years back. In the search experience you see in Office.com and SharePoint. So I have written 3 books on SharePoint and Search. I was an MVP for some years before joining Microsoft. And I'm also the maintainer and an active developer of the PnP Modern Search web parts. So I am not planning to cover those web parts as part of this session, unless there's some questions at the end, then we could possibly go into those as well if there are any questions. So the agenda for today, so I'll just touch a little bit about touch on Microsoft Search, what it is, talk maybe extensively about answers and curated answers. I will talk about vertical configuration and content and how to think about this. And then also how to think about hub sites or intranets and how you might want to configure those to work for your scenario on the search box level. So let's get started. So what is Microsoft Search? Microsoft Search internally is a lot of teams. So we have teams, three offices in Norway. There's at least 2 or 3 offices in India. We have offices in China. We have in Germany, in London, and in Redmond, and other places in the US as well. So there's quite a lot of teams work on Microsoft Search across the product. So if you look at the search architecture and clients, so Microsoft Search is, in theory, or basically, it's the search experience you see in Outlook or Outlook for Web, in SharePoint, in Office.com, in Teams, in Bing, that means Bing at work, the Windows search box as well, and also in Edge. That means all of these search experiences or clients which show you content coming from M365 is powered by Microsoft Search. So Microsoft Search is both the API layer across or used by all these clients, but also it's the clients themselves where it surfaces. So we don't typically talk about Microsoft Search when we talk about classic search. So classic search means search in SharePoint. Yes, it is part of the full stack. I mean, if you look at the SharePoint layer, SharePoint files and search, and also people search in classic, that's part of it. But Microsoft Search is then all the other sources as well. That means you can have external content, being used through the Microsoft Graph connectors, Teams chats, answers, as I'll talk about, Azure Active Directory, which means people, together with the people on the right side, which is the old user profile application SharePoint, which still has some profile data, which is also being moved over to the new profile API, which you might have seen in the graph. So all of those are coming together. We have emails, calendar, and tasks. That means when you're searching in Outlook, those items are also part of Microsoft Search. And then you have Yammer. So that means today, if you go to Outlook, you would typically see emails or calendar appointments. But we are also looking to bridge in some of the answers. That means if you search for HR in your mail, maybe showing an answer where you can find HR-related content on your intranet might be a good thing. So we're bridging all of these content sources across all the clients. And if you talk about Teams, there has been a lot of customer asks saying, okay, I'm getting all the content within Teams and those sites, but what if I want to get all the other content? Because Teams is becoming more and more a primary client for people to use as interacting with M365. That means why shouldn't you be able to upscope and then get other items, maybe Power BI, files from your OneDrive, etc., which is not tied directly to a team. So this is all work in progress. That means it's the same search API or the same search service, Microsoft Search Service in the middle here. That means all these content sources are available to all the clients. And then it's more a matter of what's the primary function for each client, and then what's the additional content you should start to surface in these endpoints. And just to touch on some of the common search scenarios, I mean, it's about discovering topics you are not familiar with when you're in an exploratory phase. Maybe you want to refine something you have worked on, and which is shared with you. I'll just mention that refind is probably the focus scenario in Microsoft Search today. So when you search in Microsoft Search in Bing or in Office.com or SharePoint, the relevance of data close to you is a very important factor. So that means refine, and that's because when looking at the metrics on search, we know that the refined scenario is very strong, and then also for finding people. So that means we have prioritized that for now. That doesn't mean we don't want to invest in topics outside of what you usually work with. And I'll be honest. So in my personal experience, classic search works today better with the research scenario, finding topic outside of what you work with, at least in large organizations. And it's just because it doesn't use that personalized ranking model. But we are working to figure out how can we make both of those search scenarios working for the end users without having to add a lot of the different UX toggles, like where you have to pick one over the other. Yeah. And then people search is a strong refine scenario, both from the search box, but also in if you search for people's name, you will get a people answer, so you can find those people you're looking for. And then at the end here, you have the bookmarks and acronyms, which I will touch more on quite soon. And I just want to point out, like, this might not be the best slide, but if you have garbage in, you get garbage out, and that's what search is all about. If you don't curate your content or have a conscious decision about your information architecture or how content is created and stored, well, you will not get very good results coming back out. So that's something to think about. We will do our best to automate everything and use machine learning behind the scenes and teaching models, etc., to make it as good as possible. But it doesn't mean that human intervention is not needed. And I think that goes for any piece of software. I mean, you as a business owner or a consultant working for a customer, you probably know the scenarios best, you know the content best, you know the mental model of how people think about the content. And that's a very important factor when you start configuring and think about the search experiences. So when do you need to configure or customize? So you can start with out of the box. It works for the majority of scenarios, I would say. and for small or medium businesses, it might be okay. But that means if you go in the configure option, that means if you start to look at, okay, what kind of searches are not yielding results? Are you seeing too many results? Are you not seeing results? Do you need to start to set up maybe some of the bookmarks and answers? Do you need to figure out in SharePoint to change the scope of some of the sites, which I'll touch on later? Is the content people asking for, is it searchable? Or do you need to ingest it into the search index to make it searchable via the connectors? Or do you have such custom needs that the out-of-the-box search experience is not possible to sort of solve your scenario? That means you have to look at the search APIs, either the old SharePoint search API or the Graph search API, and build your custom experiences. So that's sort of a sliding scale of your needs. I would suggest, I mean, it's less complex and least effort to the left, and then it becomes more complex and more effort as you move along. And I think most businesses are probably, well, will probably benefit from being in the middle there somewhere. Like, you should do some configuration, is my opinion, unless you don't have any data stored in M365 at all, which is probably not the case if you're attending this webinar. So that means you need to curate the search experience. So this is just a screenshot of the admin in M365 for search. I will go over this as well later. So if you talk about answers, so you have bookmarks. So bookmarks is what was previously called promoter results or best bets in SharePoint. So here's an example of one of the out-of-the-box bookmarks. So that means if you search for Excel online, if you haven't done any configuration, you will actually get this bookmark showing in your search experience. So, because there's a multitude of predefined bookmarks enabled in every tenant. So unless you delete them, they will show. So to the left is what you will see in Office.com or in SharePoint, if you or SharePoint Home, if you do tenant-wide search. And on the right, you have the work vertical in Microsoft Bing with the same bookmark. That means you have a title, you have a link, and then you have a short description for this. And this is very useful, at least for content not present in M365 at all. So if you have some other intranet, some other applications for maybe logging hours or vacation, project management and whatnot, then adding these as bookmarks. I do know that a lot of companies create bookmarks for landing sites in SharePoint. So if you have, for example, an HR or a marketing department, they have a SharePoint site, they add a bookmark. That might be a good starting point. But as time goes along and people start using that site, those sites will probably pop up at the top anyways. And that means if you search for example, so say you search for HR, so then you will have a bookmark for the HR site, and then the next hit below the bookmark will most likely be the HR site. That means you're wasting one space in the visible results in the web browser, which could have been more useful to show or display some other result there. So I would then suggest to remove the bookmark if those sites are actually coming up on top. Yeah, something to think about at least. If you then move over to Q&A. So Q&A is I would say it's the big brother or sister of the bookmark, but it allows for more author flexibility. So here's one I created for vacation. So you see I have a large image there, and if you look at the expanded version to the right, I also have a list with 1 and 2 have fun and relax. So the Q&A answer supports Markdown for authoring the answer, which you don't have in bookmarks, and you don't have to provide a URL. So the URL is optional. But that means if you need to add an image, if you need to add some more emphasis, you can have lists and tables, and everything Markdown supports is possible to add into this one. But it will show collapsed in the beginning. So be conscious about what you have at the top and what you want people to see before they possibly click the see more button. So do you really need the bookmark if you have Q&A? It's sort of up to you. They're very similar, but yeah, they cover the same need, but you have more author flexibility, as I said, in the Q&A. And then you have acronyms. So acronyms is one of my favorite features working in Microsoft. We are a very acronym heavy company. So here's an example where I search for TTS or define TTS, which could be time to search or time to success. And then you see below there's like try technical system sync. And for me, it's time to success. That is what it means for me. I mean, how long does it take for someone when they search until they have found the correct result? And these can be both mined and admin authored or curated. So that means if I do define TTS, I will see different results compared to someone working in a different part of the org, because these are mined from documents I have access to and from emails sent to me, so they will be private, together with the curated ones, and that ensures that the acronym you see will likely be the correct one which you are looking for. So a very popular feature. And then it's sort of a specialized version of a bookmark or a promoter results. I think in classic SharePoint search, you might have created a bookmark for these, but it's probably better to do these as acronyms, and then you can add more acronyms on the same definition to show all of them. So right now you have to trigger those. We do like define and then the term, or what is, or you can do the term definition. So there's different triggers to show this, similar to what you have on the web. So if you go to that documentation link, you will find the different triggers, which will trigger acronyms right now. There's also possible to do a variation of locations, which will show a map. So in this example, I have created a location answer for MDCN, which is Microsoft Development Center Norway, with the address to our office. So that means if it's a large organization or a large company, you have a lot of buildings or locations, or maybe it could be customer locations. If you want to show those, then you could add those as special types of location answers, where you have the name and then you add the address, so you can show the actual map instead of just a textual representation. And then related to that, you have something called floor plans. So if you see the image right now, so I'm actually sitting at that desk where my image is shown. So that's my desk at the office, called 4049. So that means if you have floor plans of your office location, assuming people are coming back to the office, so this is probably my 6th time in a year I'm at the office, trying to be here every Friday, then you could use this to find where people sit. But then again, if people are sitting at home, this might not be that useful, since your office location is not updated in Azure AD if you're at home or in the office, but that's a different problem. But at least it's an option for those who have people sitting in special in the office. And then you have the automation versus the curation, which I talked about, especially for both for acronyms, but could also be for other answers. And here I have clicked a feedback button. So we are adding a feedback link to our search experience, where you can click feedback, and then you can click. So I picked here, I want to suggest an internal link, maybe to the payroll site. That means if I didn't find it and I know the better link, I can propose a better solution for this to show. When we talk about verticals, so verticals, so let's just quickly switch to my browser. The verticals are the verticals you see up here. So we have the all vertical file sites, people, news, images, and Power BI. We know there has been a huge ask to be able to customize these verticals and add your own. And I just had to say, well, very sorry, we are delayed. I know we're probably over a year delayed to get the ability to add verticals outside of connector content. So connector verticals are there. Those have been available for a good while now. But if you want to have your custom verticals with SharePoint content, the current GA date is in likely early 2022, which is still a quarter away. So we are sorry, but we are working very hard to get this feature in. That means so you can create your custom verticals and add your custom filters, and then add your own result types and layouts using adaptive cards as we are using for connector results, and have those surfaced in your search experience, both at the tenant level and at the site level. So we do have a private preview. It is possible to get into the private preview, either with a test tenant, so you can start testing it out. Yeah, you can probably reach out to me if you want, and I can connect you with a team if you want to get into this private preview and start looking at it right now. And if we have time at the end, I can also show this what it currently looks like. So let's jump into an admin demo on the answers, feedback, and some of the verticals, and maybe let's see also on the filters. So if I go to the admin center, so this is, if you go to the M365 admin center, this is your default experience. So to find the search settings, they are hidden a bit. So you need to click show all, and then you need to go and expand settings, and then you will find search and intelligence listed as an option. That means if I now go to answers, so I have my curated acronyms. So these are the ones an admin can create. When you add a new acronym, it can take up to 24 hours before it's visible in search experience. So just be patient. You will not see the automatically mined acronyms here, which are individual per person. So those are not shown here because that would be a breach of privacy if you surface those to admins. If we go to bookmarks, so here you see all of the default bookmarks coming with a tenant, as I told you, so you can use those. And I will now filter on suggested. So as if you remember, I showed that I had added I want a link to the payroll through the UX. I can just show that as well. So if I go to the search experience, click feedback, and if you do, like, I want to suggest an internal link, for example, when you submit that, this will then appear in the admin portal. So that means I have this, and then I can publish it, or I can edit it, and I can publish it. And then it will become available for end users. So this is a good way to have your employees to sort of suggest new links which they can find, so the admin don't have to necessarily come up with all the scenarios. So it can come from all the people using search as well. There's also a bunch of other suggested here as well. I mean, so I see one for COVID-19 resources, which is a good topic these days. Something you probably would like to have a bookmark for if you don't have it in your organization today. We can just go to Q&A as well, and I can let's just open this vacation bookmark to show the edit experience. So here is using Markdown. So I have an image there on top. If I, just as an example, if I want to have like a headline 1, like this is a headline head 1, or I can do a head 2. Didn't spell that correct, but you see you have different options how these should work. And an important thing for both Q&A and bookmarks is, so you can also set the dates when this should show. That means if you have an event coming up, maybe you just want to show this particular dates. So if you have a end of year party coming up, maybe you want to show this between maybe in November and December and not the rest of the year. There's also an option to specify by country or region. This currently works on IP address, so it might not be that useful if you're on an internal network with VPNs, etc. And that means using the group option might be a better approach. So if you have a dynamic AD group where you use properties from AAD, then that could be a better way of targeting for location. There is also work in progress to then maybe expose those AAD properties directly in the setup. So instead of having to use dynamic groups, then you could use these rules directly in the setup. That means you can target specific Q&A or acronym or bookmarks to specific people in the org depending on Azure AD attributes. There's also the possibility to target 2 different devices. That means should it be only for people using Windows as their desktop or people using Macs. So if you do PC, like if you have a bookmark called PC support, then if it's a Mac user, then maybe there's a different support endpoint for Macs compared to Windows PCs, for example, or for mobile devices. So it gives you flexibility to sort of target the right approach instead of having one bookmark or Q&A where you list all the resources in one. And then we also have, let's see, and then you can also do like targeted variations. So it's the same settings as you had above, but it means that you can have a different UX experience per device as well. So maybe if for the mobile device, maybe I removed the image and didn't show the image, right? So it would take less space on a mobile device. Right. So let's see. And also if I go to Insights, so I'll quickly switch back. So if I click feedback here, and I click like it's helpful, I didn't find what I looking for one of the others, this feedback will then appear in the feedback pane here. So you go to Insights and Feedback. So here's feedback I sent in 2 days ago, which is here. So that means an admin can solve it. Something to think about is on feedback, if you click Manage Settings. So by default, send user feedback to Microsoft automatically. I believe that is checked. If you don't want the feedback to be sent to Microsoft, then you should uncheck this. The benefit of having this checked is that if something is not working from a product, if it's not content related directly, but it's more related on the tech, then we can get this feedback as well, or the admin can opt in and send the feedback to Microsoft for when it's applicable and then sort of filter out. So that depends on the process you have. And all of this is treated anonymously, so it's not like we are seeing who it comes from anyways when you provide feedback. But it's a great way to influence features or if something is working or not working in the product. So I will not, let me just bring in, zoom in. So this is my demo tenant. I just want to show the custom verticals with SharePoint content. So let's say if I take, so I have some verticals here. So this one is a SharePoint vertical. So what this will look like when you're either on the private preview or when it's shipped. So let's edit the vertical. So you give it a name, and then on the content source, in addition to the connectors, if you are using connectors, you can pick SharePoint as a source. And then you will also have the ability to add custom KQL into this box. That means if I only wanted to show list items, I could do like content class STS list items generic, for example. the search schema in SharePoint is not easy. Some of you have probably worked with it, but you just need to find out the scope. Or if you just want to scope the particular site, you could scope it to a path. We are also supporting query variables. So for those who are familiar with query variables, so if you have, say you want to scope results to only content which is authored by a particular person. So I could do something like author and then profile, and then you can start expanding what's available in the profile API. So I think it's profile.user.display name, something like that. So it means anything coming in the profile API, which is accessible through the graph API, so you can look at the properties you have there. You should be able to use those as a profile variable in this in this setup. So this is particularly powerful if you are creating custom search experiences, maybe at the site level, or to tailor content just based on parameters on the user's profile. There's other variables as well, but we are changing from the user dot notation, which you had in Classic Search, which is targeting the user profile service in SharePoint, to use the Azure AD profile store for query variables. So I will then remove this. And then if I go to filters, so this is just picking different filters. So I here clicked, I create a date, display author, or a refinable string, and then name them something, and they will then show in the UX. So if I go, for example, to office.com, let's zoom in a bit.
We just have one question in, if you don't mind me asking it.
Sure.
Yeah. We do not give access to the admin center to our publishers who are responsible for content management. How can we surface these settings / possibilities to our publishers?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? So if the publishers need to create answers, you need to set up a process of how they give this to the admin. So I believe there's a role called search admin. So if you're a search admin, then you can go to the M365 admin and admin only the search settings, right? So you don't have to grant like full admin access, but you can limit it to a search admin, and then you can expose this setting. So that's typically a role you might have in your organization, or it's possible. But if it's multiple business owners and they maintain their own, I mean, they could click the feedback button and suggest new bookmarks, for example, and then have the admin who has rights to edit them. Or maybe you have a spreadsheet. So let me just go back to the admin page real quick. So if I go to answers, and for example, if I go to bookmarks, there's an import function here where you can import from a CSV file. So I mean, if you have you could have a CSV file or an Excel file in CSV format stored at a certain place, and then you could sort of curate it there and have a process where someone at regular intervals sort of imports this into the experience from that CSV file. I think that's those are the best suggestions I know about right now. Yes. And then going back to the vertical. Right. So if I now go to my SP vertical, I didn't have any content there. Let's use an all vertical instead. So here's the file type. These two are out of the box filters. And then you have author as a custom one, so it's using display author as a filter. This is a demo. I do not recommend using display author as a author filter in the UX because it has so much weird data. I would use something else. I'll likely do a blog post on this because it's come up quite a lot lately, both internally and also through the PMP web part project and GitHub issues. Like what's a better approach for an author filter? So I will touch on that. I'll most likely blog on that later. But if you think you have control of a display author, you could try it out and see if it works. Yeah. And then I also had just set up one for source, which is using the content source property, and now, well, it's only SharePoint content because it's only one content source in its vertical. But this could be any property you have set up on your items in SharePoint, and then aggregated those to a, say, refinable string managed property. Those are the useful ones. For the custom connector verticals, you can also set up this as part of the connector schema when you set that up. Right, so let's see if I go back. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about hub sites. So I have here, so this is a hub site. So for those who don't know what hub sites are, I mean, so typically you take a, it could be a communication site, and then you would nominate this as a hub. So if I go to the SharePoint Admin Center and go to my active sites, so if you just take a site here, and then you can go to the hub setting, and then you can say register as a hub site. So this is also an admin operation, which has to be done by a SharePoint admin to set this up. And then for any other site, then you can tie them into this hub. So so this is already connected to the Contoso work site. So this one is not connected to a hub. I can then associate it with the hub. So that means you are creating a hierarchy of sites. So typically, so if you think about an intranet, so it could be the intranet homepage, some of the resources on top, and then you have a multitude of areas below it. So it could be maybe different departments or different areas where you have different parts of your organization curating those contents, and then you create different sites for those. So in this sample in Contoso Electronics, we have global sales as the hub, and then I now have like search across sites. I'm just going to search for everything. If I go to my sites tab, so there's 3 associated where retail operations, and sales and marketing associated to this hub as a hierarchy. That might be a good way to curate their content when you look at your information architecture. So you have to look at what makes sense for your org, what kind of relationships do you have. And there's also a feature coming where you can nest these sites, so you could have a larger tree. That means I could take this sales and marketing site, I can nominate as a hub as well, and I could have sites below it, for example, per country or per region, and then all of that will sort of ladder up if I was at this level, assuming you have the right permissions. So if I search, let's say if I search for files, so I will now, let's search for notebook. So you see 2 of these sites have notebooks. So that means this is coming from the retail site and the sales and marketing site. So those would then be OneNote notebooks, not in the parent or the hub site itself, but from the ones below it. So I will now go over to the retail operations site. And if you see here, it says search this site. So now if I search for notebook, which is interesting. Maybe it was, yeah, so this one didn't have one. But the scenario would be, okay, why won't I see sort of the same results on the site as at the hub level? Because they are a cluster of sites, right? So now that it's a cluster of four sites. Let's just go back to the site tab, show all of them. So we have these 3 sites associated to the hub at the top, to the global sales. So that means from an end user point of view, they might not care if they're at the global sales site or the retail operation. They would just want the same information from all these sites. So what I can do is I can configure this search box to include results from the full site. So that I will do that right now. Currently, you have to do that through either the API or PowerShell. So I have used the PnP PowerShell command list right now. So I have connected to the retail operation site, which same URL you have on top there. So if I do get search PnP, let's see, PnP search settings. So I get the default settings on site. See, site search scope is default scope. So what I will do, I will use the set commandlet and then do search scope, and I will set this to the hub level like this. And if everything goes to plan, if I refresh this, the URL here now, then the search box changed to search across sites. So if I now search for notebook, I get these, like, because I land on the same same scope as the hub itself. If I go to sites, yeah, I will get all the same site. So that means you can configure search to be the same for all the sites in the hub. I know there's also, for the internet scenario, if your landing page should be tenant-wide search, then you can also configure the search box to be tenant-wide. So that means it will be the same experience on SharePoint Home, or if you up scope in the breadcrumb to the org level. So this could be the default search experience as well. If you have custom search needs, you can also redirect the search box to a custom page outside of the Microsoft search pages. All right. And I think that was the content I'm planning to cover. So here's some links to Microsoft Search Overview, Graph Connectors, and also the roadmap. And I guess the point is, help your business plan for Microsoft Search so you don't get smoked, right? As a more political correct version of saying crap in, crap out. So if we have some other questions at the end, I'm happy to take those.
Perfect, yes. How will search experience be if the company doesn't use AAD?
If you don't use AAD, then you are not using Microsoft Search, right? Because your users has to be in AAD in order to use Microsoft Search, because you access it through either office.com or SharePoint Online or Teams, right? And then you are syncing your users to AAD.
Okay. Is it possible to integrate Microsoft Search in Microsoft Teams to the users, so the users could search the internet through Microsoft Teams?
So right now in Teams, it only surfaces content within the teams you are a part of. But we are talking with the Teams team. So I mean, so I'm working on tenant-wide search, but we are talking closely with the Teams team. And as I started with, like how would you upscope and show other content? We haven't landed on what the design and experience should be, but we are evolving the team search experience. So sometime in the future, you could have that. But since you can also sort of use a home site in Teams, you can in theory link in and then have the search, like have two search boxes. So you have one within the home site showing, and then you have the team search box. But that's not the ideal search experience either. That means you could work around it. So it's definitely a scenario being looked at, but I can't promise any timelines. But yes, we are acknowledging the scenario and trying to address it.
Can we extract all the new search configuration settings, brackets, acronyms, locations, and so forth, so we can deploy the same configuration on different tenants?
Admin APIs are underway.
Perfect. Speaking of getting smoked and asking directly, is this going to replace the PnP Modern Search web parts?
That's a good question. Since I'm working closely on both, right? So my Microsoft hat is the out-of-the-box experience, and then my outside of work hat is the PnP web parts. I think it's a gradual scale. I hope that if people are using the PnP search web parts to do like the vertical and custom filter configuration, I hope they will move over to the out of the box when that ships, when available, because that gives you access to all the newest rank models and all the other innovations we have. And our internal API is richer than what's currently exposed in the Microsoft Graph API. So the PnP web parts can follow all the features coming in the Graph API. So that means, I think search addressance is now in beta, so that could be enabled. Bookmarks is not there yet, but it's being planned. So that means when bookmarks is available, we could start showing those in the PnP web parts. I mean, you will always be behind, but it's a cost of maintaining a custom solution as well. And I try to drive home a point when I talk about this with people is, can you really control which search box your users are using? So if you use the PnP search web parts, that means you set up a custom page, and then you need to ensure that all your employees go to that page and search. But when they search from either from Bing or from Office.com or from any endpoint outside of SharePoint, you can't really control the search experience. You can only control that within SharePoint. So is it a good thing to have one custom one and try to teach everyone to use that, or do you rather want to have the same experience across all the endpoints with out of the box? So I would not say it's not about replacing the PnP web part. I think the PnP web part has a place. I think mostly for content rollup right now, and if you are creating more application or vertical driven search experiences, I haven't, like before joining Microsoft, I did never use a PnP web parts to replace the out of the box experience. I know people are doing it. That's not what I would recommend. So I think that might be the best answer I can give. And I did a blog post earlier as well. If you go to my blog on techmikael.com, where I sort of talk about the positioning of Microsoft Search versus the PnP web parts. So I think it's a sliding scale, like how much customization do you need and what's the urgency of getting some of the things which are coming, which is currently not there, but which might be available in the PnP web parts.
Perfect. And how is the ranking model managed?
It's managed internally, which is a very short answer. There's no way to impact the rank model, and so the rank model is built up by a lot of different features. So one is the signals coming from the graph. We could I guess you could say that like the popularity rank, like what are you working on, what are your colleagues working on, and then who's your manager, and it's like the closeness of graph signals, which makes content coming from SharePoint or stored in SharePoint and participating in and also Outlook emails having an advantage because you have user signals. So that's part of it compared to other content. The other part, there's a freshness aspect to it. There's different relevance on different file formats. The distribution of document formats in your tenant has a factor. The tenant size, like how many employees do you have, is a factor. So there's a lot of different factors in the rank models, and these are constantly adapting, and it's all machine learned. So we are testing out new models. So that means even if we gave you a toggle, that might work for you right now, but that doesn't mean whatever you did will work in the future. That aside, if you look at the connector content, where you can do something called semantic labeling, we're also looking to do something called rank hints. So today, a title of a document is weighted more than the body of documents. There's also other metadata. So metadata fields in SharePoint today is not given extra more weight, which is a huge demand by customers, and it's been for a long while. I have an old blog post on how we can fix this as well. It's a bit tricky, but we are trying to take the approach we do for connector content and sort of backport that also for SharePoint content. So sometime in the future, I envision you to set up a metadata column in SharePoint and say, okay, this should have more weight in search, so it will impact the rank model. So we know that, okay, this should carry more weight and not only have the title. So that is something to be addressed in the future. I don't have any timelines as well, but it's an effort to sort of align or modernizing the SharePoint schema management with what we're doing for connectors. So doesn't really answer your question. XRank is still an operator you can use. You can use that in the vertical config. It's not being blocked. I'm not recommending using it because the factor of what you need to boost with is very unknown, and the scale changes because of these machine learned models. So you don't know that. So if you have a particular result set, you don't know that the most important item will have, say, a score of 1 or 30 or 1,000, or maybe it's negative 1,000, right? The scale shifts, so it's super hard then to know what you should boost with, which makes manual intervention with rank super hard. But I'm happy to connect sort of offline on specific requirements if someone has that, like what do you try to accomplish and why.
Perfect. Can you set the site collection search box to point to a specific custom scope?
You can set it to site or the hub or tenant wide. Those are the 3 scopes you can set it to. But with the vertical configuration coming in, then you could add extra KQL delimiters to limit to a certain or particular content using one the properties in the search schema, like content type or file format or something.
Is it still beneficial or necessary to structure metadata and use managed metadata with respects to AI techniques evolving?
I don't think you should stop using it if you're already using it, and then rather push and hope for us to use metadata better in search than we are currently doing. I'm heavily invested in this myself because I think it makes so much sense. We are looking at, so when you're adding custom filters, to tie those to metadata as well, because we do know that many organizations have global metadata across their documents. So being able to use that in search is super useful. I don't think they should have to go to the PnP web parts to solve those scenarios. So keep on doing it, and we will try to do the right thing and make it work for you.
Any tentative timelines for search scoping controls on SharePoint Online, brackets possibly to select scoping this site hub, all sites when searching?
Soon. Yeah, we have it internally. There's been a couple of snags we need to work out, but yes, soon.
That sounds exciting. And then we have another person asked, how can we reach you for the private preview? Twitter?
Ping me on Twitter or file my email, like any social media you can find me. It shouldn't be too hard to find me. Then like any LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, and just reach out. I'll connect with you.
Okay, that's the end of the questions now. Some people are saying great session, great content, and they enjoyed your answers. So that was nice to hear.
All right, thank you. And we're 5 minutes left, but yeah, that's not too bad. So thank you everyone for attending on this Friday, and have a great weekend.
And thank you very much for taking the time to join us and end up our SharePoint week. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that brings a wrap to our SharePoint week. Thank you to everyone who joined the webinars, and be sure to catch up on any webinar recordings, any blogs, how-to videos, etc. on SharePoint week landing page. So wishing everyone a lovely weekend, and goodbye.